Dameon Pierce shines for the Texans once again in the preseason. How should you value him in your dynasty leagues? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk, Associate Manager of Editorial Operations for DraftKings Nation. And of course, as always, I am joined by my buddy, my co-host, and Cowboys homer, Marcus Mosher. You could follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher, bringing you all that content-y goodness over at USA Today. Guys, we are headed into week 3 of the preseason. So many takeaways, so many, storylines that we're sort of starting to settle in and getting our grasp on the 2022 season. But we've got to build a dynasty roster, not just in the off season, but we have to prepare you for winning in season.
Mm-hmm.
So be sure, hit that subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and check us out on YouTube, where we are streaming every single show, and you can get all of that, in your inbox to get that league up, or to get that leg up on your league mates and dominate this season. Marcus, we're headed into week 3 of the preseason. I'm so excited, but we're going to talk about one takeaway from Thursday Night Football that has been a recurring theme over our the last 3 weeks of our shows. Let's talk about Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, Dameon Pierce. We got to make sure we get our quota of Dameon Pierce on the podcast, right? So I'm actually going to give you the floor on this one, Kate, because going into yesterday, I had Dameon Pierce in exactly 0 dynasty leagues. He had another incredible game against the 49ers. He started with the first team, 6 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown, and people are excited. Why should they be excited?
I mean, they should be excited for all of the other reasons I've already mentioned, Marcus. Like, this guy has absolutely dominated, not just in the preseason, okay, dating back to 2021, led the FBS and PFF rushing grade. That's been everybody's stat this offseason, or through this preseason so far, is that Dameon Pierce leading the way in PFF rushing grade all preseason. Like, forget that. He was leading PFF rushing grade among running backs last year in 2021 with Florida. Like, he's already been doing this. He's already been elusive. He's already shown contact balance. He's shown all of these traits that we're all very excited about. The issue has been purely volume. From a volume standpoint, like last year, just had 100 carries in his final season at Florida. If he had more carries, Marcus, we would have seen him go much higher in the NFL draft. From a statistical analysis standpoint, from a performance standpoint, there's no reason that he fell as far as he did in the NFL draft, other than lack of, volume. But I mean, gosh, that didn't stop the 49ers from drafting Trey Lance last year based on a lack of, a lack of volume, a lack of, it's
counting stats, basically, right?
Yeah. Like, it's not necessarily all about that. Like, we've got to look at what he's done in every single opportunity that he's had to touch the ball. And every time he's touched the ball, good things have happened, Marcus. Now, I think we've already talked a lot about Dameon Pierce throughout this entire preseason. So I think the most beneficial thing to do is, with his presumably skyrocketing draft stock, how can we value him in our dynasty leagues? Where does he fit right now in our overall rankings? And how do we view him for 2022? What is his trade value? Let's get into all of these nuances of how we for those of you who didn't have any shares of Dameon Pierce heading into the preseason, what is it going to cost to get you a couple of those shares?
Yeah. So first and foremost, his ADP back in April overall was 153, May 121, June 114, July 111, August 101. I've got a feeling it's going to go up even higher here in September. Yep. All right, let's talk about where he ranks among running backs. So he was being drafted as RB4 entering August behind Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, James Cook. Can you even make a case that James Cook should be higher after what we've seen in the preseason?
No.
Okay. I kind of agree with you. I like James Cook a lot.
I like James Cook a lot, and he's performed extremely well in the snaps that he has seen with the Bills this year. But I also think another takeaway from the Buffalo Bills is that all of the running backs are looking really good. Devin Singletary looks fantastic. Again, Zach Moss been like everybody pretty much has been beating the drum everybody's been beating the drum for Zach Moss this offseason, which it's about darn time that everybody gets on board here. But like that's been the recurring theme here. And I just think that it's going to be a mess. Dameon Pierce, I think, a very different running back, and just I think is more of a tough runner. I look at James Cook as more of like a smooth kind of runner with finesse.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dameon Pierce, he'll just run you over, and he's not afraid to do that. He's not afraid to take that contact, initiate that contact. He's like my running back dream. He is what I loved about Zach Moss. Just not afraid to take some of that contact. But again, the takeaway from the Buffalo Bills is that they all look great, and this is going to be a mess. Dameon Pierce, however, that backfield isn't a mess because we know who the guy is, and it doesn't really matter all that much who's behind him. Like Rex Burkhead, sure, he'll probably profile as that, third down back. Marlon Mack, I think he'll mix in now and then. But I mean, week 2 preseason, Dameon Pierce sitting out says it all. It's definitely, I think you could make the case for Dameon Pierce RB2. And Marcus, we've got a little bit of data to back that up at this point.
So Ryan McDowell, our co-host here,
I've heard of him.
He had a poll yesterday during the Texans 49er game. Who would you rather have going forward in Dynasty Leagues, Kenneth Walker or Dameon Pierce? And the results, after about 2,000 people answered, were basically right down the middle. And I kind of get it. Like, I like Walker's profile so much more. He's just more athletic. He comes from a big school. He had a ton of production. But he's got some flaws in his game, and he's already banged up, and he's on another team that doesn't have a great offense. I would still lean Walker, but the fact that we're having a conversation about it at all shows you how much Dameon Pierce has just risen over the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, and it's not just been when he's had the stage in preseason. Like we've been hearing good things about him all throughout training camp. Like he's been shining. It's nice that like the national media is finally catching up on that. But what would you be willing to trade at this point for Dameon Pierce? Because I would be willing to send a first round pick pretty easily in 2023 first, and sure, take it.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. I know you're a little bit higher for me. I've seen a million 2023 second round picks for him. I mean, I would do that, but
start there. Don't offer up your first for nothing. Yeah. But if it comes down to it, and like you're a contending team, especially like that's a trade you make, I think, as a contender, where that first round pick's probably going to be on the later side.
Let's play this game really quickly just to see how far up the rankings Dameon Pierce is for you. You just tell me who you'd rather have. Right now, Damian Harris.
Dameon Pierce.
Okay. James Cook. We already said that one. Ramondre Stevenson.
Pierce.
Tony Pollard.
Pierce.
James Conner.
Pierce.
Miles Sanders.
Pierce.
Josh Jacobs.
Pierce.
Elijah Mitchell.
Oh, that might be the cutoff, Marcus.
Antonio Gibson.
Pierce.
David Montgomery.
So that's the range. What is that? Like right around RB20?
Yeah, RB 18 to RB 20. So congratulations, Kate. You have Dameon Pierce ranked as RB or inside the top 20 RBs. That's pretty quite a pretty big rise for Pierce.
again, I've been conducting this hype train since like May. So
Yeah, you deserve this.
I'm happy. I'm the hostess on the train, handing out snacks as you like board the train,
Yep.
taking your tickets.
Yeah. You deserve
I'll
this.
welcome you aboard.
You deserve. All right, we're gonna talk about some other news besides just Dameon Pierce. Believe it or not, this is not just
Oh.
locked on Dameon Pierce, but it's also locked on Dynasty Football. But before we do that, wanted to tell you about Dave. Dave is the banking app that can help you get money when you need it. If you're living paycheck to paycheck or you're struggling to make ends meet, it can be really stressful when unexpected expenses come up. Now, Dave can help you get out of a pinch when you really need it. Dave is the banking app that can get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That is more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There is no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need some help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That is DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. All right, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I know this is not Locked On Cowboys. You can listen to that show at a different time. But
No,
Tyron
this is
Smith,
locked on Dameon Pierce.
yes. Dallas Cowboys left tackle Tyron Smith, all-pro left tackle, injured in practice on Wednesday. I think he's going to be out for the season. You can bank on him not coming back at all during the fantasy playoffs, at least. Who does this hurt the most in the Cowboys offense?
I think it's got to hurt Zeke, right?
Yeah,
And
I think so.
Like I think just coming down to it, you have an excellent quarterback who like is already been managing a team here and working with a team that is already sustaining some injuries. You don't have Michael Gallup back in the mix just yet. Avoided the pup list, which is fantastic. So, they might have ruled him out for week 1, but they're projecting him back, before week 4, which is great. But you still have to expect that he's not going to be 100% right out of the gate. You have Michael Gallup, who I think, was a huge loss right there out of the gate. You have CeeDee Lamb, you have the loss of Amari Cooper. So like you already have a quarterback that's dealing with all of that. Luckily, he's a little bit mobile. So, if some of these plays break down and he's not able to find a player in the open field, he can take off. But when you have Jerry Jones out here saying that like the offense rides on Zeke and, they've paid him the money, it's not like they're just talking out of their booties. Like,
well, they kind of are,
no,
but yes,
they kind of are. But Marcus, like their bank account has also been talking out of its booty and paying Zeke Elliott the way that they did. They're still very much financially invested in him. There's no way out at this point. So you kind of have to ride Zeke. But
yeah.
Marcus, like this is going to be, I think, the biggest concern is just, when you have Ezekiel Elliott, you've seen this decrease in overall efficiency from him last year, which, I do attribute partially to injury. It doesn't help, right?
No,
Like
it doesn't help.
It doesn't help. It remains to be seen how much it will hurt, but it doesn't help, especially when we are looking at all of the other losses in the receiving game.
Yes, I agree. And one of the reasons why it doesn't help is because I think what's ultimately going to happen is on third downs, on passing downs, rather than letting Ezekiel Elliott be the little dump down, check down receiver, they're going to keep Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield to block because he is a very good blocker. Like let's give him his flowers there. Like he's a fantastic blocker, and they're probably going to need him to help whoever's the left tackle for the Cowboys. So ultimately, that's going to lead to fewer target opportunities. And I think it's, that's going to be more of his workload this year is helping keep Dak Prescott upright, kind of grind out the short yardage stuff. But yeah, there's just no way that he's getting the targets. He's not going to be as efficient. And I think that it actually might help Tony Pollard because they're going to need to find ways to get rid of the ball quickly and get it into the playmaker's hands. And I think that's Tony Pollard and not Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I think they're definitely, and like that's not to say that we haven't seen plenty of involvement from Ezekiel Elliott as a receiver, but I think when it comes down to trusting which of these running backs, um, do you trust to keep your quarterback safe?
It's Zeke. It's
It's
not even a
Zeke.
question. Yeah.
It's not even a question. And so it really does. It hurts Ezekiel Elliott twofold because, I mean, again, he's been incredibly involved as a receiver, hasn't seen fewer than 60 targets in any of his last 4 seasons, which is kind of incredible. Like very underrated in terms of his receiving volume for fantasy. But not only do you have, that concern that injury is going to impact his overall efficiency as a runner, even if he is fully healthy, but when you kind of take that necessity for him as a blocker and put that into the mix, it's not looking great. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Ezekiel, like I'm not bumping Ezekiel Elliott out of my top 15 just yet, because I think there's going to be enough there. And I do think, volume should still be there enough to bump him in there. But again,
Yep.
in general, you can't be excited. Does this increase the value of Tony Pollard for you?
No, but I don't think it doesn't hurt him as much as it hurts Ezekiel Elliott is my takeaway. But the one thing I would say about just the Cowboys in general, this is a big loss in terms of like actual on the field efficiency. Like I think this is going to hurt the Cowboys and like their chances to make a run to the playoffs or make a deep run to the playoffs. I'm not sure how much it hurts the overall offense for a couple of reasons, Kate. Number one, they're used to playing without Tyron Smith. Like this isn't something new, right? And on top of that, it's not like Tyron Smith has been the all-pro left tackle that we're used to see. Like he's certainly declined over the last couple of years. But Kate, these are the last 2 seasons in which Dak has played and Tyron has missed. I'm just going to tell you the number of points the Cowboys have scored. Are you ready? In 2020 against the Falcons, they scored 40 points. Then they had another game where they scored 31 against Seattle, 37 against the Giants, going over to 2021, 16 against the Broncos, bad performance, Dak coming back from an injury, 9 against the Chiefs, bad performance, 43 against the Falcons, 21 against the Giants, 56 against Washington, and 51 against the Eagles. So they have some games that are a little up and down, but this has not prevented the offense from really not averaging 30 points per game, was what they've done over the last couple of seasons. So
last 16 games without Smith, Dak Prescott has an 11-5 record, 68% completion rate, 305 pass yards per game, just 104 passer rating. Like Dak Prescott, especially not necessarily super impacted. I think, this might be an impact that, or a loss that impacts less on the stat sheet than
and more
it
on
does.
the team. Yes. We're not trying to mitigate the loss of Tyron Smith because he's a big loss, but I'm not sure from a fantasy perspective if it's going to make a massive deal. We'll see though. All right. We have some other offenses that we are concerned about, Kate. But before we do that, I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, you can't always take a lot away from the preseason, but there are always a few offenses that make you a little bit nervous based on what you've seen. Who are those offenses for you so far in the preseason?
I've got to talk about the Chicago Bears. And I I know they've gone 2-0 so far in the preseason, but it's the tale of what we're seeing when we've actually got some starters in the mix there. We know preseason wins are not indicative
No.
of regular season performance, but I mean, Marcus, it's looking really, really ugly. Anytime you see Justin Fields like out there, it's the pocket collapsing. They're not doing a good job protecting him. They haven't done any favors in terms of getting him weapons that can, maybe compensate for some of those issues. Like, sometimes when you have a really good, slot receiver that, you can rely on to get open quickly, you can dump the ball out quickly. They just haven't done a good job of providing enough weapons for Justin Fields to develop. The offensive line looks atrocious.
Mhm.
There's just not anything that I'm excited about from this offense, and I don't want to touch any of these pieces with a 10-foot pole, honestly. Maybe, of course, outside of David Montgomery, who, could touch the ball reasonably 290 times this year, just from a
Yeah.
pure volume standpoint.
I mean, I think Seattle is the easy answer for me, but I mean, the expectations are they're going to be bad anyways. But for me, it's the Colts. Matt Ryan only played one game in the preseason, and they were into the second quarter playing against Buffalo's third team defense, and they were getting destroyed. They have no speed on offense outside of Jonathan Taylor. The receivers, I love Michael Pittman. I think he's going to have a huge year. He's not scaring anybody deep. Their offense just looks so slow. The offensive line really did not play well. I don't want to say I'm out on their offense because I still like Jonathan Taylor. I still like Matt Ryan. I still like Michael Pittman. But I'll be honest, like there's a chance that this offense is just very meh all year long.
And I mean, Marcus, looking at their sort of options, like, yes, you have Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, and I would argue that that's the greatest building block on their roster there. I love the acquisition of Matt Ryan, but we also haven't seen, Matt Ryan be the Matt Ryan of old in a couple of seasons now.
Yep.
You have plenty of reasons why that could be the case, outside of him being washed. Like they haven't had the weaponry there, with the Falcons. You didn't have Calvin Ridley
Mhm.
last season. Offensive line concerns, all of that. Like I think that the pieces are there for the Colts, but in terms of like depth in their receivers, from the wide receivers and tight ends, not really there. Like Mo Alley Cox, I really like him and the opportunities he's given. I like what he is capable of when actually running routes, but
He's slow.
outside
And he's
he's
slow. Like
not.
that's my whole thing with this offense. Outside of Jonathan Taylor, this has got to be the slowest offense in the league.
And they don't I mean, Alec Pierce functioning as your wide receiver 3. Your wide receiver 2 is Paris Campbell, who hasn't been able to do much of anything so far in his
Yeah.
career. Like outside of Michael Pittman, who is probably going to see a ton of double coverage this season just based on the lack of threat. Like, Alec Pierce, fantastic. He can be a deep threat, and
Well, think about last year. Like even T.Y. Hilton, who missed a lot of time, was banged up. He at least gave you the illusion of, hey, somebody who could run by us and make plays down the field. I like Alec Pierce, but he's a timed fast guy. I'm not sure he's going to be somebody that defensive coordinators are going to have to put a safety deep to cover.
Yeah, I'm not sure in general what to make of this team, because even in like preseason practices, I feel like we've heard enough good things to be like, okay, like this could be an offense that works, but when it's come to what they've done actually on the field, just not what you would
No.
want to see.
Yeah. So we have one more whole week of preseason outside of a couple games. Maybe some of these teams can answer some questions that we have. We'll see. But I think the Colts certainly make you a little bit nervous. The Seahawks make you nervous.
New
Anybody
York
else?
Giants.
Oh, Patriots.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, so it's really interesting. The Giants are a team that, in general, if you've been listening to the chatter coming out of training camp, like it's, usually,
Rough.
it's usually roses, right? Like people are trying to pump up the offense. People are trying to amp up everything and just inject positivity into these reports, to the point where like you have to view them with caution. But there is no rosiness out of Giants
No.
camp whatsoever this year. Just across the board uh, has been rough. And again, interestingly enough, another team that's gone 2-0 in the preseason. But my Lord, am I trusting them to do absolutely anything in the 2022 season? No.
Nope.
They could absolutely be in contention for that number 1 overall pick in 2023. And it's not looking great. Maybe they use that number 1 overall pick to get a CJ Stroud, and knock Daniel Jones on his caboose. And that's not to say that I don't think this is going to be a productive offense for fantasy football, because we've already seen, we've seen Saquon Barkley perform as a top 5 running back despite being in a poor offense. So like, it's not necessarily that I'm avoiding this team for fantasy, but it's a warning that I don't think you're going to be wanting to tune into these games, and you might be a bit concerned about your consistency for the assets in these offenses on a week to week.
I'd also mention Carolina, whose only quarterback who's thrown a touchdown so far is Sam Darnold, on 3 passes. So, yeah, another one. I think we might be seeing Baker Mayfield here in week 3 against the Bills. We'll see how that goes, but I'm a little concerned. That is it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. It's fantasy draft week on the Locked On Podcast Network, so make sure you go listen to Locked On Fantasy Football for your second listen. Fantasy expert Vinny Iyer brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle to give you the moves no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy drafts with Locked On Fantasy Football. You can follow our show wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out on YouTube. You can follow Kate at FF Dameon Pierce. I mean, FF Ball Blast. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy your football weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.